My son emptied our life savings for his scammer girlfriend. My 13-year-old grandson made them pay. I never imagined my own son would be the reason our family's financial world would collapse. After my husband passed away, I saved every penny to secure our future. My son, Daniel, had been struggling financially, and I didn't hesitate to help him whenever he asked. But things changed when he introduced me to his new girlfriend, Alina. She was charming, sweet, and seemed to care deeply. For him, at least on the surface. Over the next few months, Daniel became distant. He started asking for larger sums of money, claiming it was for investments that Alina had suggested. Before I knew it, he had withdrawn almost all our savings, over $150,000, without my consent. When I confronted him, he admitted that Alina needed the money for a business opportunity and promised it would double soon. My heart sank. I warned him she might be a scammer, but love had blinded him. One morning, I woke up to find our accounts empty. The house mortgage was overdue, bills piled up, and Daniel was nowhere to be found. He had moved in with Alina, ignoring my calls. The betrayal was unbearable. However, there was one person who refused to accept this injustice: my 13-year-old grandson, Liam. Despite his age, he was tech-savvy and had always been curious about online security. After overhearing my crying, he promised, "Grandma, I'll fix this." Over the next week, Liam worked tirelessly on his laptop. He hacked into Alina's social media accounts, uncovering evidence that she was part of an international scam ring. He also found proof that she had stolen from other families too. Liam cleverly traced her Bitcoin wallet and managed to freeze a large portion of the stolen funds. By reporting it to the cybercrime division, armed with undeniable proof, we went to the police. Alina was arrested, and Daniel finally saw her true face when she tried to flee the country. Though we didn't recover all the money, we got back enough to survive. Most importantly, Daniel apologized, realizing how his foolishness almost destroyed us. The real hero was my grandson. His courage and intelligence brought justice when the adults had lost hope. I learned that sometimes the smallest member of the family can make the biggest difference. Astor's trust is the foundation of any family. It is the invisible thread that binds generations together, allowing parents to rely on their children and children to rely on their parents. When this trust is betrayed, the wound it leaves behind is deeper than any financial loss. In this story, the betrayal came from where it was least expected, from a son to his mother, a bond that is supposed to be unbreakable. The emotional devastation of this kind of betrayal cannot be measured in dollars or property. It cuts through the heart and soul of the one who placed unconditional love and faith in their child. For years, the mother has sacrificed her own needs to provide for her family. After losing her husband, she became both mother and father, working tirelessly to ensure her son, Daniel, grew up with everything he needed. She saved meticulously, thinking about his future, his education, and even his eventual family. The life savings represented decades of hard work, sleepless nights, and countless sacrifices. Each dollar carried a story of a missed holiday, an overtime shift, or a dream postponed. It wasn't just money sitting in the bank. It was the embodiment of a mother's love and resilience. When Daniel approached his mother asking for financial help, she didn't hesitate. She believed in him because that's what parents do. They trust. She assumed that whatever he needed the money for, it was something worthwhile, something that would better his life. This wasn't just a financial transaction. It was an extension of the bond they shared. For a mother, giving to her child never feels like a loss. It feels like love in action. But that love became the very weapon that was used against her daughters. The withdrawals grew larger and larger. The mother began to feel a gnawing sense of unease. She questioned him, gently at first, and then with more urgency each time Daniel reassured her. His words were laced with affection and confidence, convincing her to silence her doubts. It's hard to believe that your own child could lie to your face, and so she pushed aside her fears, trusting that he would never hurt her intentionally. She ignored the inner voice that whispered something was wrong. because the thought of him betraying her was too painful to bear. But the day the accounts were emptied, reality came crashing down. It wasn't just a financial ruin, it was the shattering of a bond she had believed to be unbreakable, to find out that the person she had loved, nurtured, and trusted the most had secretly taken everything left her breathless with grief. It wasn't the kind of pain that one recovers from quickly, it's the kind that lingers. Resurfacing in quiet moments and late-night thoughts, the sense of loss was overwhelming, not just because of the money, but because of the realization that her son had chosen someone else's scammer, a stranger over his own family. Betrayal within a family has a ripple effect. It doesn't only hurt the person directly betrayed, it shakes the very foundation of the household. The mother began to question everything. Had she failed as a parent? Was her love not enough to keep him grounded? Was there something she could have done differently? These questions tormented her, even though deep down she knew that the responsibility lay with Daniel and his choices. Still, the pain of betrayal makes logic irrelevant. The heart aches regardless of reason. Trust, once broken, is incredibly difficult to rebuild. Every phone call, every conversation with Daniel after that moment was strained. Even when he eventually apologized, the wound remained. Apologies can't erase memories, and they can't restore what was lost overnight. Trust is fragile. It takes years to build, but only moments to destroy. Furthermore, this betrayal carried another dimension of pain. It wasn't just a personal wound. It was a public one. Friends, relatives, and neighbors who had once admired the close bond between mother and son now looked on with pity or judgment. The mother felt humiliated, not only because of the financial loss, but because she had defended her son to everyone who questioned him. She had believed in him so fiercely, only to be proven wrong. This humiliation added salt to an already raw wound. The broken trust also affected Daniel himself. At first, he was blinded by love and the manipulation of his girlfriend. He didn't see the gravity of what he was doing because he believed he was helping someone he loved. But when the truth surfaced, love blinds judgment. Love is one of the most powerful emotions in the human experience, capable of inspiring acts of great kindness and sacrifice. However, it can also cloud judgment, making even the most rational individuals overlook warning signs and ignore their better instincts. In this story, Daniel's love for Alina, his scammer girlfriend, became the driving force behind a series of reckless decisions that led to the financial devastation of his family. The phrase "love is blind" could not have been more fitting, as his affection for her completely overshadowed logic, loyalty, and reason. When Daniel first met Alina, she appeared to be everything he had ever wanted: charming, affectionate, and seemingly supportive of his dreams. Her charisma was intoxicating, making Daniel feel like the center of her world. This is a common tactic used by manipulators. They shower their victims with attention and affection, creating a bond so intense that the victim begins to prioritize the manipulator's needs above everything else. Daniel was no exception. He fell for her completely, and in doing so, he began to distance himself from the people who genuinely loved him. The early signs of manipulation were there, but love made Daniel blind to them. Alina began subtly isolating him, convincing him that his family was too controlling or that they didn't understand him. Slowly, she became his primary source of validation and emotional support. This emotional dependency meant that when she asked for financial help, Daniel didn't question her motives. To him, helping her wasn't just about money, it was a way to prove his love and commitment. He believed that as long as he stood by her, she would stand by him. Unfortunately, his loyalty was misplaced. Love-induced blindness also made Daniel ignore the inconsistencies in Alina's stories each time she asked for money. She likely had a convincing narrative, perhaps about a business opportunity, a family emergency, or an investment that would benefit them both. To an outsider, these stories might have seemed suspicious, but Daniel was too emotionally invested to see through the lies. Love made him trust her completely, even when the evidence suggested otherwise. He ignored the doubts that occasionally surfaced, convincing himself that she wouldn't deceive him because they were in this together. Another aspect of love's blinding effect is the way it alters priorities. Daniel began to see Alina's needs as more important than his mother's sacrifices, or the security of his family's future. The money in the account was not just his, it was his mother's life savings, the result of decades of hard work. Yet, under the influence of love and manipulation, he justified draining those savings because he believed he was helping the woman he loved. The moral boundaries that normally guide decision-making became blurred. What he would have considered wrong in any other context seemed acceptable when done for love. The blindness caused by love doesn't only affect the person who is in love, it also frustrates those around them. Daniel's mother saw the red flags and tried to warn him, but her words fell on deaf ears. When someone is deeply in love, especially with a manipulative partner, they often perceive warnings as attacks. To Daniel, his mother's concerns may have seemed like unnecessary interference or even jealousy. Instead of listening, he became defensive, further entrenching himself in the toxic relationship. This is one of the most heartbreaking aspects of such situations. Watching someone you love walk into danger while refusing to believe you. Alina exploited Daniel's emotions masterfully. She knew that his love for her would make him vulnerable, as she used that vulnerability to her advantage. Scammers thrive on emotional manipulation, and romantic scams are particularly effective because they tap into one of the strongest human desires, the need to love and be loved. By making Daniel feel special and needed, she gained control over his decisions. He became willing to sacrifice everything, including his mother's trust and financial security, just to keep her happy. Even as the situation escalated and the withdrawals became suspiciously large, Daniel clung to the belief that he was doing the right thing. This is another way love blinds judgment. It creates a cognitive dissonance, where the person in love ignores facts that contradict their feelings. Admitting that Alina was a scammer would have meant admitting that he had been deceived, and that was too painful to face. It's often easier to hold onto the illusion of love than to confront the harsh reality of betrayal. When the truth finally surfaced, that Alina was part of an international scam ring, Daniel's world came crashing down. The moment of realization was devastating because it forced him to confront not only her betrayal, but also his own actions. He had to face the fact that his blind love had caused immense harm to his mother and jeopardized their family's future. This kind of awakening is painful, but necessary. It strips away the illusions and forces a person to see things as they are, not as they wish them to be. The aftermath of love's blindness can be equally damaging. Daniel was left with deep feelings of guilt and shame. He had to grapple with the consequences of his choices and the damage he caused to his relationship with his mother. Trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild, and he knew that no amount of apologies could instantly repair the harm done. However, this painful experience also became a turning point for him. It taught him the importance of balancing love with logic, emotion with reason. For the mother, watching her son go through this was both heartbreaking and enlightening. She saw firsthand how powerful and dangerous love can be when it's placed in the wrong hands. She learned that even the strongest bonds can be weakened by manipulation, and that sometimes love needs to be accompanied by boundaries to prevent exploitation. In a broader context, this keynote serves as a cautionary tale about the dual nature of love. While love is beautiful and essential, it can also be a tool for manipulation when combined. Scammer manipulation scams are master manipulators. They prey on human emotions, exploiting trust, love, fear, and hope to achieve their selfish goals. In this story, Alina, the scammer girlfriend, perfectly embodies how manipulation can be. So subtle and yet so destructive. Her tactics were calculated, her lies meticulously crafted, and her actions designed to slowly dismantle Daniel's ability to think critically. By the time her true intentions were revealed, the damage was already done. The manipulation was not just financial, it was emotional, psychological, and deeply personal. From the very beginning, Alina's approach was strategic. She understood that before she could take anything from Daniel, She had to gain his absolute trust. This is a common step in the scammer's playbook, building an emotional connection so strong that the victim begins to rely on them emotionally. She likely showered Daniel with affection, compliments, and attention, making him feel special and needed. This initial phase, often referred to as love bombing, is powerful because it creates a deep emotional bond very quickly. Daniel, who may have been lonely or vulnerable at the time, became completely enchanted by her charm. Once that emotional connection was established, Alina began to weave her web of lies. These weren't blatant lies that would raise immediate suspicion. They were carefully crafted stories that played on Daniel's emotions. Perhaps she claimed to have financial difficulties caused by bad luck or unfair circumstances, stories that elicited sympathy rather than skepticism. Maybe she presented herself as a hardworking woman with big dreams, needing just a little support to achieve success. Each lie was designed to make Daniel feel like a hero, the one person who could save her from her struggles. Scammers often use this tactic because it taps into a person's natural desire to help the ones they loved out. As time went on, Alina escalated her manipulation. She likely tested Daniel's loyalty with small requests at first, asking for minor amounts of money or favors that didn't seem unreasonable. When Daniel complied without question, she knew she had him under her control. Gradually, her requests grew larger, becoming more urgent and emotionally charged. She may have fabricated emergencies, claiming that without immediate financial help, something terrible would happen. Each time, Daniel's love for her and his desire to protect her overrode his better judgment. This incremental approach ensured that by the time she asked for massive sums, he was already deeply invested emotionally. Financially, another key element of scammer manipulation is isolation. Scammers often try to create distance between their victim and the victim's support network because outside perspectives can break the illusion. Alina may have subtly encouraged Daniel to distrust his mother's concerns, perhaps saying things like, "Your mom doesn't understand us," or "She doesn't want to see you happy," by framing herself as the only person who truly cared. For Daniel, she made him less likely to listen to warnings from family or friends. This psychological isolation allowed her manipulation to continue unchecked. Scammers are also skilled at using guilt as a weapon. Alina probably made Daniel feel that refusing her requests would mean he didn't truly love her or didn't care about her dreams. She may have said things like, "If you really loved me, you would help me," turning his own emotions against him. This is a powerful form of control because it makes the victim feel responsible for the scammer's well-being. Daniel, desperate to prove his love, continued giving until there was nothing left to give. The most chilling aspect of scammer manipulation is how it dehumanizes the victim while maintaining the appearance of care. To Alina, Daniel was not a partner, he was a source of income, a means to an end. She likely had done this to others before, using the same tactics, the same lies, and the same emotional hooks. Scammers operate without empathy, seeing their victims not as people, but as opportunities. Yet they are skilled enough to convincingly fake empathy, which makes their manipulation so effective. When Daniel finally emptied his mother's life savings for Alina, it wasn't because he was reckless or uncaring. It was because her manipulation had completely clouded his judgment. She had created a false reality where giving her everything seemed like the right thing to do. This is why manipulation is so dangerous. It makes victims act against their own interests while believing they are making the right choice. Alina's manipulation extended beyond Daniel. It affected his entire family. By exploiting Daniel, she indirectly harmed his mother, draining her savings and causing emotional devastation. This is another hallmark of scammer tactics. They don't just target individuals. They target families, communities, and anyone connected to the victim. The ripples of manipulation spread far and wide, leaving destruction in their wake. What makes this case particularly interesting is how Alina's manipulation ultimately unraveled. Manipulators often believe they are untouchable, but they underestimate the resilience of the people they hurt. When Daniel's 13-year-old son, Liam, stepped in, He used his intelligence and resourcefulness to expose her lies. Liam's actions not only revealed the truth, but also highlighted how manipulation, no matter how sophisticated, can be undone by determination and courage. The exposure of Alina's scam brought a mix of emotions: relief that the truth was finally out, anger at the extent of her deceit, and sadness for the damage done. For Daniel, the revelation was devastating because it forced him to confront how completely he had been manipulated. Realizing that someone you love never loved you back is one of the most painful truths to accept. The manipulation had blinded him, but it also taught him a valuable lesson about trust, love, and the importance of listening to those who truly care from a broader perspective. This keynote highlights the psychological tactics scammers use to control their victims. They exploit vulnerabilities, create emotional dependence, and use guilt and fear to maintain control. Understanding these tactics is crucial in preventing similar situations. It also serves as a reminder that manipulation can happen to anyone, regardless of intelligence or experience, because it targets emotions, not logic. Finally, Alina's manipulation underscores the importance of vigilance and open communication within families. If Daniel had felt comfortable discussing his relationship openly with his mother or seeking her advice without fear of judgment, the scam might have been uncovered sooner. This is why education about scams and emotional manipulation is so important. It empowers people to recognize red flags before it's too late. In conclusion, scammer manipulation is a calculated and ruthless process that can strip victims of their money, their confidence, and even their relationships. Alina's actions demonstrate how a skilled manipulator can turn love into a weapon, using it to control and exploit. Her downfall, however, proves that even the most cunning scams can be defeated when truth and determination prevail. This keynote serves as a stark warning about the dangers of emotional manipulation and the need to protect not just our finances, but also our hearts. Elderly vulnerability individuals often become prime targets for scammers, not because they are less intelligent, but because they are more trusting, emotionally generous, and often isolated. In this story, the mother's vulnerability was not rooted in weakness, but in her loving and trusting nature. After losing her husband, she devoted her entire life to raising her son and building a secure future for him. Her savings represented decades of hard work, sacrifices, and unwavering dedication. Yet, this very love and trust became the reason she fell victim to the devastating consequences of her son's choices. This keynote underscores how emotional vulnerabilities, especially in the elderly, are exploited in scams and manipulations. As people age, their life experiences often teach them to see the best in others. They tend to believe in family bonds, honesty, and moral values. The mother trusted her son unconditionally because he was her child, and in her heart, he would never do anything to harm her. This is a natural sentiment for many elderly parents who have spent their lives giving without expecting much in return. Unfortunately, scammers and sometimes even manipulated family members see this trust as an open door. They exploit it because they know the elderly individuals often struggle to see betrayal coming from within their own family. Another factor contributing to elderly vulnerability is emotional dependence. After the death of her husband, the mother may have relied more heavily on Daniel for emotional support and companionship. Her desire to keep him close and happy may have made her overlook warning signs. She didn't want to believe that he was being reckless or that someone could be using him. This emotional reliance created a blind spot, allowing the scam to progress without early intervention. Scammers understand this dynamic well and exploit it by weaving themselves into the emotional lives of their victims, either directly or indirectly, through loved ones. In addition to emotional factors, elderly people often have financial stability that scammers covet. Many have retirement savings, investments, or properties accumulated over a lifetime. These assets, meant to secure their later years, become targets for those who wish to exploit them. In this story, the mother's life savings were intended to support her in old age and perhaps help her grandchildren in the future. Yet, because she trusted her son completely, she didn't take protective measures like joint accounts with safeguards or legal restrictions on withdrawals. This lack of financial safeguards made it easier for Daniel under Alina's influence to drain the accounts. Elderly vulnerability is not only about finances, it's also about technology. Many older individuals are less familiar with modern scams, online frauds, and the digital tools that scammers use to manipulate. While the mother in this story wasn't directly dealing with online schemes, her lack of awareness about how easily scams can infiltrate relationships contributed to the situation. She may have thought scams only happened to strangers over the internet, not realizing that manipulation could reach her through someone as close as her son. This lack of awareness is one of the most common reasons why elderly individuals fall victim to fraud. They simply do not expect it. Furthermore, there is a societal factor at play. Elderly victims often hesitate to report scams or even admit they've been deceived. Pride, shame, and fear of judgment keep them silent. In this case, the mother initially tried to handle things quietly, hoping Daniel would come to his senses. She didn't want to involve outsiders or authorities because exposing the situation felt like airing private family issues. Scammers benefit from this silence, as it delays intervention and allows them to continue their exploitation unchecked. The emotional toll of being scammed or betrayed at an older age is particularly severe. Younger individuals may have time to rebuild financially and emotionally, but for elderly victims, recovery is much harder. The mother in this story not only lost her savings, but also faced the emotional devastation of realizing her own son had been the instrument of her loss. This kind of betrayal can lead to depression, anxiety, and a profound sense of isolation. It shakes the very foundation of her world, making her question her judgment and even her relationships with other loved ones. Despite this vulnerability, the story also shows resilience. Even though the mother suffered greatly, she found strength in her grandson Liam's actions. His intervention gave her hope and a sense of justice. It proved that while scammers may prey on vulnerabilities, they cannot completely destroy a family's spirit. The mother's eventual recovery, though partial, demonstrates that even in the face of manipulation, elderly victims can find support and healing when the truth comes to light. This keynote also sheds light on the importance of protecting elderly individuals from exploitation. Families need to have open conversations about finances, set safeguards on accounts, and ensure that no single person has unchecked control over significant assets. Education about scams both online and offline is crucial. Elderly parents should feel empowered to ask questions and verify information without fear of appearing suspicious or untrusting. Love should always be accompanied by wisdom, and that means setting boundaries even with the people we trust the most. In the larger context, elderly vulnerability is a societal issue. Scammers know that older individuals often have limited access to up-to-date information about fraud tactics. They also know that many elderly people value their privacy and may not seek help until it's too late. This is why scam prevention programs, community awareness campaigns, and legal protections for seniors are so important. By raising awareness, society can reduce the number of victims and make it harder for scammers to succeed. For the mother in this story, the betrayal was not just about losing money, it was about losing her sense of security in the world. However, her experience also became a source of strength for her and her family. She learned to be more cautious, to ask questions, and to protect herself from future exploitation. Most importantly, she realized that while vulnerability is a part of being human, it does not define her. She emerged stronger, wiser, and more aware of the dangers that exist, even in unexpected places. The lesson here is clear. Elderly vulnerability is real, but it can be mitigated with awareness, communication, and protective measures. Families must come together to ensure that their elderly members are not left alone. To face potential exploitation, love should not mean blind trust. It should mean creating an environment where trust is supported by safeguards. In this story, the mother's vulnerability was exploited, but through the courage of her grandson and the eventual realization of her son, she regained some control over her life ultimately. This keynote emphasizes that while scammers may target the elderly because they seem like easy prey, they are far from defenseless. With the right support, even the most vulnerable can rise above manipulation. The mother's journey reminds us all that vulnerability should be met with protection, not exploitation, and that no amount of manipulation can completely destroy the resilience of a loving family. Desperation and heartbreak are powerful emotions that can drive people to make irrational choices, leaving them vulnerable to manipulation and regret. In this story, these emotions played a central role not just in the actions of Daniel, who was caught in the grip of his love for Alina, but also in the suffering of his mother, whose world collapsed when her son's choices left her financially and emotionally devastated. The intertwining of these emotions created a tragic chain of events that almost tore the family apart. The first layer of desperation was Daniel's own. He had fallen deeply in love with Alina, and that love came with an overwhelming need to keep her happy, to prove himself worthy, and to secure their future together. Love, when healthy, uplifts and inspires, but when paired with desperation, it becomes a dangerous force. Daniel was desperate to hold on to Alina's affection, and he believed that fulfilling her requests, no matter how unreasonable, was the key to keeping her. Every time she asked for money or support, he felt pressure to deliver, fearing that failing her would mean losing her. This desperation blinded him to the growing red flags around her behavior. He ignored his mother's warnings and his own instincts, focusing only on what Alina wanted. Daniel's desperation was also fueled by insecurity. Perhaps he felt he wasn't good enough for her, or that she might leave him for someone else. If he didn't meet her expectations, scammers often exploit these insecurities, feeding their victims with subtle suggestions that they need to prove their love. Alina likely used phrases that reinforced Daniel's fears, making him believe that his love was conditional on providing for her. This emotional manipulation pushed him further into a state where he could no longer think clearly. His judgment was clouded by the overwhelming need to hold on to a relationship that was, in reality, a carefully crafted illusion. On the other side of this tragedy was the mother, whose heartbreak grew with every passing day as she watched her son drift away from her and sink deeper into Alina's web. Her desperation came from a place of love and fear. She feared losing not only her savings, but also her son. She was desperate to save him from making a mistake that would ruin his life and the life they had built together. Each conversation with him was filled with pleas, warnings, and attempts to make him see the truth. But the more she tried, the more defensive he became, and the more isolated she felt. For a parent, there is no greater pain than watching your child make choices that lead to their own destruction and feeling powerless to stop it. The heartbreak for the mother intensified the day she discovered that her life savings had been emptied. This was not just money lost, it was decades of sacrifice wiped out in a single act. Every penny at a story night she worked late, things she went without, dreams she put aside to ensure her son's future, to see it vanish because of his blind trust in someone who didn't deserve it, broke her in ways words cannot fully describe. The financial loss was tangible, but the emotional loss was far greater. It felt like her son had chosen a stranger over his own family. It felt like betrayal. This kind of heartbreak is particularly cruel because it strikes at the core of a parent's identity. A mother's love is supposed to be unconditional, yet in this case, that love was used as a tool to drain her resources. She questioned herself endlessly. Did she raise him wrong? Did she spoil him? Was she too trusting? This self-blame is common in situations like this, even though the true fault lies with the manipulator and, to some degree, with the choices of the deceived. Still, the emotional toll is devastating, and it lingers long after the money is gone. The emotional weight of desperation and heartbreak also affected the family dynamics. The relationship between mother and son fractured, creating tension and distance. Trust, once broken, is hard to mend. Daniel's actions had not only drained the bank account, but also the emotional reservoir of their relationship. Conversations became tense, filled with accusations and guilt, even when Daniel tried to justify his actions. Claiming it was all for love, it only deepened his mother's pain. To her, love should never come at the cost of family, yet that is exactly what had happened. Meanwhile, Daniel himself was not immune to heartbreak. Though his actions caused the suffering, he too eventually faced the crushing reality that the woman he loved never loved him back. When Alina's deception came to light, when she tried to flee with the money and abandoned him, the truth hit him with brutal force. He realized he had sacrificed everything for a lie. This realization shattered him. Not only had he lost Alina, but he had also damaged the most important relationship in his life, the one with his mother. His heartbreak was compounded by guilt, making it difficult for him to even face her. Desperation and heartbreak, when combined, can lead people to make extreme choices, but they can also pave the way for growth. In this story, both Daniel and his mother had to endure intense emotional suffering before they could begin to heal. The mother had to find the strength to forgive, not because she forgot what happened, but because she refused to let anger consume her. Forgiveness was the only way to rebuild her relationship with her son and find peace within herself. Daniel, on the other hand, had to confront the consequences of his actions head-on. He had to acknowledge the pain he caused and take responsibility for it. This process was painful, but necessary. Through his heartbreak, he learned a valuable lesson about love and trust, that real love does not demand blind sacrifice, and that trust should never be placed in someone who has not earned it. The experience reshaped him, making him more cautious, wiser, and more appreciative of the people who truly cared for him. The element of desperation and heartbreak also ties into the heroic actions of Liam, the 13-year-old grandson. While his grandmother was consumed by grief and Daniel by guilt, Liam acted. His determination to uncover the truth and expose Alina's scam became the turning point of the story. He demonstrated that even in the darkest moments, hope can emerge from the unlikeliest places. His actions not only recovered part of the stolen funds, but also restored some faith in humanity. For his grandmother, her heartbreak began to ease when she realized that while one family member had hurt her, another had gone to great lengths to save her dot in a broader sense. This keynote highlights how scams are not just financial crimes, they are emotional assaults. They exploit desperation, deepen heartbreak, and leave scars that last far longer than the financial losses. The manipulation targets emotions, and the aftermath devastates relationships. But this story also proves that heartbreak, though painful, does not have to be the end. It can be the beginning of healing, learning, and rebuilding. Ultimately, desperation and heartbreak are two sides of the same coin in this narrative. One drove Daniel to make reckless choices, while the other consumed his mother as she dealt with the consequences. Yet, through these emotions, the family found a way to grow stronger. They learned that while love can blind, it can also heal when combined with truth, courage, and forgiveness. This keynote reminds us that even in the midst of overwhelming pain, resilience can lead to redemption. Unexpected hero in every great story. There comes a moment when the least likely character steps into the spotlight and changes the course of events. In this case, that hero was Liam, the 13-year-old grandson who refused to accept defeat when the adults in the family felt powerless. Despite his young age, Liam's actions became the turning point in the story, proving that courage, intelligence, and determination are not limited by age. His role as the unexpected hero not only saved his grandmother from total devastation, but also brought justice to a situation where hope seemed lost. From the beginning, Liam had been observing the situation quietly. Children, though often underestimated, are remarkably perceptive. They notice tension, hear conversations, and pick up on emotions even when adults think they are being discreet. Liam saw his grandmother's sadness, her endless crying over the loss of her savings, and her emotional turmoil over Daniel's betrayal. He also sensed the growing distance between his father and grandmother. While the adults were trapped in a web of emotions, his father blinded by love, and his grandmother paralyzed by heartbreak, Liam's young mind approached the problem differently. He was curious, analytical, and, most importantly, willing to take action. The first spark of heroism in Liam came from empathy. He couldn't stand to see his grandmother suffering, unlike Daniel, whose love made him irrational. Liam's love for his grandmother made him brave and resourceful. He promised her he would fix this, words that might have seemed naive coming from a 13-year-old, but which carried the weight of determination. Sometimes, heroism begins with a simple decision, refusing to accept injustice. Liam's decision to act was rooted in this belief that something had to be done, and he was the one who would do it. Liam's technical skills played a crucial role in his journey as the unexpected hero. Growing up in the digital age, he was far more comfortable with technology than his father or grandmother. What adults saw as intimidating or confusing, Liam saw as an opportunity. He began by researching scams online, reading about common tactics, and learning how fraudsters operate. This knowledge gave him a clearer understanding of what had happened and how to fight back. He realized that Elena was not just an individual manipulator. She was likely part of a larger scam network. This insight fueled his determination even more, because it meant his actions could help not only his family, but potentially other victims as well. Liam's investigation was not reckless, it was calculated. He started by digging through public information, Elena's social media, her online interactions, and the digital trail she had left behind. Being young, he knew how to navigate these platforms better than most adults. He spotted inconsistencies in her posts, links to suspicious accounts, and connections to profiles that seemed fake or duplicated. Piece by piece, he collected evidence, building a picture of who Elena really was. His curiosity turned into a mission, and he spent hours, often late into the night, piecing the puzzle together. But Liam didn't stop at gathering surface-level evidence. He went further, using his knowledge of cybersecurity to trace digital footprints. He accessed metadata from photos she posted, identifying locations that didn't match her claims. He tracked email headers, uncovering IP addresses that hinted at her true location. Most crucially, he traced transactions linked to her Bitcoin wallet, something she thought would keep her anonymous. Liam's ability to link her financial activities to fraudulent networks was nothing short of extraordinary. For a 13-year-old, this level of skill was remarkable, but it also highlighted how determination can drive someone to achieve what seems impossible. Throughout his investigation, Liam kept his grandmother's hopes alive. He reassured her, kept her informed in ways she could understand, and never gave up even when things seemed complicated. His actions gave her a sense of comfort, a feeling that she wasn't alone in this battle. This emotional support was just as important as the technical evidence he was gathering. His bravery was not just in the digital realm, but in standing up to a situation that had intimidated the adults around him. The turning point came when Liam compiled all his evidence into a clear, undeniable case. He presented it to his grandmother, and together, they took it to the authorities. The police, impressed by the depth of his findings, were able to act quickly with his evidence. They tracked down Elena and uncovered the scam network she was part of. She was arrested before she could flee, and her fraudulent activities were exposed. Some of the stolen funds were recovered, and other victims came forward because of the case Liam had helped build. Liam's heroism did more than just bring justice, it healed his family. His actions forced Daniel to confront the truth. When Daniel saw the evidence, he could no longer deny that he had been manipulated. Though it was painful, it opened his eyes to the reality of the situation. The guilt was heavy, but knowing that his son had saved the family gave him a sense of pride amid the shame. Liam's bravery became the bridge that began to mend the broken relationship between Daniel and his mother. The aftermath of Liam's heroism transformed him from a quiet child into a symbol of resilience. For the family, his grandmother no longer saw him as just a boy. She saw him as her protector, her savior, Daniel, humbled by his son's courage, began to rebuild his relationship with both his mother and Liam. The family, though scarred by the ordeal, came out stronger because of the actions of the one person they least expected to take control. On a larger scale, Liam's story as the unexpected hero carries an inspiring message. It shows that heroism is not defined by age, status, or strength. It is defined by action. True heroes are those who rise when others fall, who fight when others surrender, and who bring light into the darkest moments. Liam's intelligence and bravery prove that even the smallest voice can create the loudest impact. Moreover, Liam's actions highlight the power of technology when used for good. In a world where scammers use technology to deceive and exploit, a young boy used the same tools to uncover the truth and deliver justice. His story serves as a reminder that knowledge is power, and when combined with determination, it can defeat even the most cunning adversaries. Lastly, Liam's heroism gave hope not just to his family, but to anyone who hears this story. It reminds us that no matter how hopeless a situation may seem, there is always a way forward. Help can come from unexpected places, and sometimes the smallest member of a family can make the biggest difference. His courage is a testament to the idea that you don't need to be strong to be brave, you just need to care enough to act. In conclusion, Liam's role as the unexpected hero turned the tide of the entire story. He transformed despair into hope, betrayal into justice, and heartbreak into healing. His intelligence, courage, and love for his grandmother made him stand out as the true savior in a situation where adults felt powerless. Through his actions, he taught everyone that heroism is not about age or strength, it's about heart. And Liam had more than enough of it to save the day. Clever Revenger Evans is often painted as a dark, destructive force, but in this story, it took on a different form. It was not fueled by hatred or violence, but by intelligence, strategy, and a deep desire for justice. Liam's clever revenge against Alina, the scammer who had shattered his grandmother's world, became the defining moment of this tale. Unlike rash or emotional retaliation, his plan was calculated, ethical, and brilliantly executed. It not only exposed the scammer's lies, but also ensured that she paid dearly for the pain she had caused from the start. Liam understood that fighting someone as manipulative as Alina required more than anger. She was cunning, experienced, and had deceived adults without breaking a sweat. If he confronted her directly, she would simply manipulate the situation to her advantage or disappear entirely. That's how scammers survive. They rely on fear, confusion, and the victim's inability to act decisively. Liam's revenge had to be different. It had to be clever enough to outsmart her at her own game. The foundation of his plan lay in information gathering. Before taking any action, Liam spent weeks studying Alina's behavior, habits, and online presence. He knew that scammers always leave digital footprints. No matter how careful they are, they create fake identities. But these identities often have cracks, connections to real people, reused photos, or overlapping patterns across different accounts. Liam's sharp observation skills allowed him to piece together these inconsistencies. He discovered that Alina had multiple profiles under different names, all running similar scams targeting men like his father. This was his first weapon, knowledge of her true nature. Next, Liam cleverly turned technology into his ally. He created a fake persona online, presenting himself as another potential victim or, more accurately, as the perfect bait. Using this fake profile, he engaged with Alina in ways that forced her to reveal more of her operation. She believed she was working on another scam, not realizing she was stepping into a trap. Through these interactions, Liam collected messages, voice notes, and incriminating evidence that proved her fraudulent activities. Every lie she told, every manipulation she attempted, was documented meticulously. This evidence would later become critical in exposing her. But clever revenge is not just about collecting proof. It's about using it at the right time and in the right way. Liam knew that simply confronting Alina wouldn't work. She would deny everything, erase her tracks, and vanish instead. He built his case so thoroughly that she would have no escape. He hacked into her scammer network not to steal or break laws recklessly, but to understand how deep her operations went. What he found was shocking. She was not just working alone, but was part of an organized ring that had scammed dozens of families across different countries. This revelation elevated his plan from personal revenge to something much bigger. Bringing down an entire criminal operation, the emotional side of his plan was equally clever. Liam understood that Alina's ego was her weakness, like most scammers. She thrived on control and the belief that she was smarter than everyone else. So he manipulated this ego, feeding her the illusion that she was still in control, even as he was slowly dismantling her schemes. By pretending to be naive in his fake persona, he kept her talking, kept her boasting, and, most importantly, kept her leaving digital evidence behind. The climax of his plan was nothing short of cinematic. Liam timed the exposure perfectly when Alina tried to withdraw the final stolen funds and prepare to flee. He leaked the evidence to the authorities and to the victims she had scammed. He also made sure that the scam ring's internal communications were intercepted, causing chaos within their network. By the time Alina realized what was happening, it was too late. Law enforcement had already been alerted. Her accounts were frozen, and her co-conspirators began to turn on each other to save themselves. The trap had sprung, and she had no way out. What made Liam's revenge so clever was that it was not rooted in destruction, but in justice. He didn't stoop to her level or break laws recklessly. He used intelligence and legal means to ensure she was held accountable. His actions exposed the scam to the public, helping other victims recover their funds and preventing future crimes for his grandmother. This was more than just justice, it was closure. Seeing Alina face the consequences gave her a sense of peace she thought she would never have again. For Daniel, Liam's clever revenge was a turning point. Watching his own son accomplish what he could not brought both pride and humility. It forced him to acknowledge the severity of his mistakes and the strength of his son. Liam's actions didn't just punish Alina, they helped heal the fractured bond between father and son, and between Daniel and his mother. The beauty of Liam's revenge lies in the life lessons it carried. It showed that revenge does not have to be violent or cruel to be powerful. Sometimes the smartest way to fight back is to outthink the enemy by using intelligence rather than aggression. Liam ensured that justice prevailed in a way that was fair, legal, and lasting. His actions were not about hate. They were about restoring balance and protecting his family. On a broader level, his revenge served as a warning to scammers everywhere. It demonstrated that victims are not always helpless and that even the most unexpected individuals can turn the tables. Scammers thrive on secrecy, but Liam shattered that secrecy with truth. They rely on victims' silence, but he made noise so loud it could not be ignored. His clever plan exposed not only Alina, but also the network she belonged to, helping authorities crack down on a criminal operation that had gone unchecked for too long. Moreover, Liam's actions inspired others. News of the case spread, highlighting how a young teenager had outsmarted seasoned criminals. It gave hope to scam victims around the world, showing that there is always a way to fight back, no matter how dire the situation seems. His story became a symbol of resilience, proving that intelligence and determination can triumph over deceit. In the end, Liam's clever revenge was not just about punishing Alina. It was about reclaiming power. It was about showing that his grandmother's sacrifices would not be in vain, that his father's mistakes could be redeemed, and that no scammer could ever fully destroy their family. His plan was executed with precision, fueled by love, and guided by a sense of justice far beyond his years. This keynote highlights that sometimes the most powerful revenge is not loud or violent, it's silent, calculated, and undeniable. Liam didn't need to shout or threaten. His actions spoke louder than words. He proved that even in the darkest situations, clever thinking can turn the tables and bring light back into the lives of those who have been wronged. His revenge was not just clever, it was legendary. Redemption, arc redemption, is one of the most powerful and transformative journeys a person can experience, it is not simply about saying sorry. It is about recognizing one's mistakes, taking responsibility, and actively working to repair the damage caused. In this story, the redemption arc belongs to Daniel the son who, blinded by love and manipulation, made choices that devastated his family. His journey from guilt and shame to self-awareness and atonement is both heart-wrenching and inspiring. It demonstrates how even the most broken relationships can be rebuilt through effort, sincerity, and the willingness to change. The first step in Daniel's redemption began with the shattering of illusions. For a long time, he lived in a world crafted by Alina's lies. He believed she loved him, that she needed him, and that the sacrifices he made were for a noble cause. When Liam exposed the truth with irrefutable evidence, Daniel was forced to face a painful reality. He had been deceived. This realization was a crushing blow. It was not just about losing the woman he loved, it was about confronting the fact that he had betrayed his mother, the person who had given everything for him. The emotional weight of this realization nearly broke him. Guilt became Daniel's constant companion in the days that followed. He saw the hurt in his mother's eyes, the fear in her voice as she wondered how she would survive financially, and the disappointment that lingered in every conversation. This guilt was not fleeting. It was deep and consuming. He had to confront the fact that his actions had not only cost his mother her life savings, but also fractured their bond. For a while, he withdrew, ashamed to even face her. Redemption seemed impossible, as if the damage was too great to repair. But redemption requires a choice, and Daniel chose to fight for it. Instead of wallowing in self-pity, he decided to take responsibility. The first step was admitting his mistakes openly. He went to his mother, not with excuses, but with a heartfelt apology. He acknowledged the pain he had caused, the trust he had broken, and the sacrifices she had made that he had squandered. This apology was not just words, it was a turning point for his mother. Hearing him take responsibility without blaming Alina or circumstances was the first sign that he truly understood the gravity of his actions. After admitting his fault, Daniel embarked on the difficult path of making amends financially. He knew he could never fully replace what his mother had lost overnight, but he committed to helping her rebuild. He took extra shifts at work, downsized his own lifestyle, and funneled every spare penny toward repaying her. He also sought legal advice to assist in recovering whatever funds were possible through the authorities. Each small step he took demonstrated his sincerity, and slowly, his mother began to see that his remorse was genuine. Emotionally, rebuilding trust was much harder than repairing finances. Trust is fragile, and once broken, it takes time to mend. Daniel understood this, so he did not demand forgiveness. Instead, he showed consistency through his actions. He involved his mother in his decisions, kept communication open, and made sure she felt secure in every way possible. Over time, these small gestures began to heal the cracks in their relationship. His mother, though still hurt, started to believe that he was truly changing. An essential part of Daniel's redemption was his relationship with Liam, his son and the unexpected hero of the story. Initially, Daniel felt ashamed in front of Liam, knowing that his own child had done what he failed to do. But instead of letting this shame turn into bitterness, he allowed it to motivate him. He openly thanked Liam for his courage, acknowledging that his son's actions had saved them all. This humility strengthened their bond. Daniel also made it a priority to spend more time with Liam, becoming more involved in his life and showing him that he was proud, not resentful, of his bravery. Through this journey, Daniel also underwent significant personal growth. He sought therapy to understand why he had been so vulnerable to manipulation, learning to identify toxic relationship patterns. This self-awareness became a cornerstone of his redemption. He learned that love should never demand the sacrifice of family or principles. He became more cautious in relationships, more protective of his emotions, and more appreciative of the people who truly cared for him. As months passed, Daniel's consistent efforts began to bear fruit. His mother slowly started to forgive him, not because she forgot what happened, but because she saw the man he was becoming. Forgiveness, in this case, was not about erasing the past, but about building a future where trust could exist again. She recognized that while he had been manipulated, he had chosen to rise above his mistakes rather than be defined by them. The ultimate moment of redemption came when Daniel played a key role in supporting the legal case against Alina and her scam network. Working alongside the authorities, he provided testimony, helped uncover additional victims, and contributed to ensuring that Alina faced justice. By turning his painful experience into a tool for protecting others, Daniel transformed his regret into something meaningful. This act not only helped him heal, but also restored some of his mother's pride in him. Daniel's redemption arc also had a ripple effect on the entire family. His mother, though scarred by the ordeal, found a renewed sense of security knowing that her son had learned from his mistakes. Liam, inspired by his father's efforts to change, saw firsthand that even when people fall, they can rise again through determination and sincerity. The family, once broken by deceit, became united again through love and forgiveness. On a broader level, Daniel's journey is a testament to the power of redemption. It shows that people are not defined by their worst mistakes, but by how they respond to them. Redemption is not easy. It requires honesty, humility, and hard work. It also requires time, as healing cannot be rushed. But when pursued sincerely, it can restore relationships, rebuild trust, and transform a person's entire life. Furthermore, Daniel's arc offers an important lesson about forgiveness. His mother's decision to forgive did not mean condoning his actions. It meant choosing to believe in his capacity for change. Forgiveness, like redemption, is a process. It takes courage to forgive someone who has hurt you, just as it takes courage to earn that forgiveness. Their journey together highlighted the beauty of both died by the end of the story. Daniel was no longer the man who blindly followed a scammer's lies. He had evolved into someone wiser, more grounded, and deeply appreciative of the people who stood by him through his darkest times. His redemption was not just about regaining his mother's trust. It was about regaining his own sense of self-worth. He emerged stronger, not because the journey was easy, but because he faced it head-on. In conclusion, the redemption arc in this story is a powerful reminder that mistakes do not have to define us. They can destroy us, yes, but they can also rebuild us if we choose to learn and grow. Daniel's journey from betrayal to atonement demonstrates that even when a person has fallen far, there is always a way back through honesty, responsibility, and love. His redemption is proof that with the right actions, even the deepest wounds can heal, and relationships once broken can become stronger than ever. Justice served justice is not just a legal outcome, it is an emotional resolution, a moral rebalancing of the scales, and in this story, the ultimate closure for a family that had been torn apart by deceit. The theme of justice runs through every part of this narrative, culminating in a powerful conclusion where the wrongdoers face consequences and the victims finally regained their sense of dignity and peace. When justice was finally served, it was not merely about punishing Alina, the scammer. It was about restoring hope, rebuilding trust, and sending a message that even the most cunning manipulations cannot go unpunished. The road to justice was not easy. Initially, the odds were stacked against the family. Alina was clever, experienced, and always one step ahead. She had successfully manipulated Daniel, drained the family's savings, and almost disappeared with her ill-gotten gains. For a while, it seemed as though she would escape accountability, as scammers often do. They vanish into the shadows, leaving victims with shattered lives and no clear path to recovery. However, this case was different because Liam, the unexpected hero, gathered evidence so meticulously that the authorities could no longer ignore it. His investigation transformed what could have been just another unsolved scam into a case that would make headlines. The legal battle that followed was intense. Alina, confident in her ability to manipulate, initially tried to twist the narrative. She claimed Daniel had willingly given her the money as part of their relationship, framing it as a gift rather than fraud. This tactic is common among scammers, as it creates doubt and shifts blame onto the victim. However, Liam's evidence was airtight. Every lie Alina had told was documented: her fake personas, the fraudulent transactions, and the communications that proved her intent to deceive. The sheer volume of proof made it impossible for her to maintain her facade. During the trial, the emotional weight of the testimony was overwhelming. Daniel had to face the court and recount how he had been deceived, admitting to his own mistakes. It was painful, humiliating even, but it was necessary for justice to prevail. His mother also testified, sharing the impact of losing her life-saving and how the betrayal had affected her emotionally and financially. Their words were not just about money, they were about the violation of trust, the destruction of a family's security, and the emotional scars left behind. The court listened, and for the first time, the victims' voices were louder than the scammers' lies. Alina's facade crumbled under the weight of undeniable truth. Her confidence waned as the evidence mounted. Her scam network was exposed, revealing that she had targeted multiple families using the same tactics. This revelation ensured that she was not just prosecuted for a single case, but for a string of frauds that spanned years. The authorities seized her assets, froze her accounts, and dismantled the criminal operation she was part of. The woman, who once held power over her victims, now faced the full force of the law. When the verdict was finally announced guilty on all counts, the sense of relief was overwhelming. For Daniel, his mother, and Liam, it was as if a heavy burden had been lifted. Alina was sentenced to a lengthy prison term, ensuring she could no longer hurt anyone else. Additionally, the court ordered restitution, allowing a portion of the stolen funds to be returned to the victims. While the money could never fully compensate for the pain endured, it was a symbolic and practical step toward recovery. Beyond the courtroom, the outcome had a deeper impact on the family. Justice was not just about punishing Alina, it was about healing. The verdict validated their suffering, proving that they were not to blame for what happened. For Daniel, it was a chance to finally let go of the shame that had haunted him. The court recognized that he was a victim of manipulation, not a willing accomplice. This acknowledgement was crucial in his journey of redemption, allowing him to rebuild his self-esteem and move forward. For the mother, justice brought closure. She had spent months living with the pain of betrayal and financial ruin, but knowing that the woman who had caused her so much grief was behind bars gave her a sense of peace. She no longer had to fear that Alina would return or that she would scam others without consequence. Justice restored her faith in the system and in the idea that even the most vulnerable victims can find protection when they fight back. Liam, the young hero who had orchestrated the downfall of the scammer, saw firsthand the power of truth and perseverance. His actions had not only saved his family, but had also helped other victims of Alina's schemes find justice. The authorities praised his bravery and intelligence, and his story became an inspiration to many. News outlets covered the case, highlighting how a 13-year-old had brought down a dangerous scam network. For Liam, this recognition was not about fame. It was about knowing he had made a real difference in the world. The case also sent a strong message to the wider community. Scammers, no matter how clever, are not invincible. When victims stand together, when evidence is gathered and the truth is exposed, justice can prevail. This story became a beacon of hope for other families who had suffered in silence, encouraging them to come forward and fight back against fraud. Justice, however, is not just about legal outcomes, it is also about the emotional and moral balance being restored. The family, once broken, began to heal. The grandmother, though still cautious with her finances, regained her sense of security. Daniel, humbled and transformed, became a better son and father. Liam, now seen as the protector of the family, gained confidence in his abilities and a deeper understanding of right and wrong. Together, they rebuilt what had been lost: not just money, but trust, love, and unity. The theme of justice served. And this story also extends to the concept of karma. Alina, who had exploited so many, finally faced the consequences of her actions. Her downfall was not brought about by chance, but by the very thing she underestimated, the love and determination of a family she thought she had broken. In this sense, her punishment was poetic. The web of lies she spun became the very trap that ensnared her, proving that deceit can only carry a person so far before the truth catches up. Furthermore, this story highlights an important truth about justice. It is most powerful when it not only punishes wrongdoing, but also prevents future harm. With Alina and her network dismantled, countless potential victims were spared from suffering. The family's fight for justice became a ripple that extended far beyond their own household, protecting others and raising awareness about the dangers of scams. In the aftermath of the trial, life slowly returned to normal. The scars remained, but they were no longer wounds. They were reminders of strength, resilience, and the power of justice. The family celebrated small victories, from the return of some savings to the emotional closeness they now shared. They had gone through a storm and emerged stronger on the other side. In conclusion, justice served in this story is not just about punishment, it is about restoration. It is about proving that no matter how clever a scammer is, they cannot escape the truth forever. It is about healing the wounds of those who were wronged and empowering them to move forward with confidence. For this family, justice was the final chapter in a painful saga, chapter that closed the door on betrayal and opened the door to a future where love, truth, and resilience reign supreme. A family rebuilt. Final chapter of this story is not about loss, scams, or revenge. It is about healing, unity, and the incredible resilience of a family that refused to be broken. After all the chaos, heartbreak, and battles fought, the family found a way to rebuild itself stronger than before. This process did not happen overnight. It took time, effort, and the willingness of each member to move forward. However, by the end of this journey, they emerged not just as survivors, but as a tightly bonded family who had learned the true meaning of love, trust, and forgiveness. The rebuilding began with acceptance. The family had to accept that what had happened could not be erased. The scam, the betrayal, and the financial loss were real. No amount of wishing or anger could change the past. This acceptance was crucial because it allowed them to stop living in denial or bitterness. Instead of constantly asking why us, they began asking, how do we move forward from here? This shift in mindset marked the first step toward healing. For Daniel, acceptance meant acknowledging the full extent of his mistakes without making excuses. It was a painful process, as he had to face his mother and admit that his poor judgment had put the entire family in jeopardy. But rather than allowing this guilt to consume him, he used it as motivation to become better. He focused on repairing his relationship with his mother and rebuilding the financial stability they had lost. Every day, he worked harder, taking additional shifts, cutting down unnecessary expenses, and saving every penny. These efforts were not just about money. They were about proving through actions, not words, that he was committed to making things right. The mother, meanwhile, faced her own emotional journey. The betrayal she experienced had left deep scars. Initially, she struggled to trust again not only Daniel, but also herself. She questioned her own decisions, wondering if she had failed as a parent. However, with time, she came to understand that the fault did not lie with her. She had raised her son with love, and it was that love that ultimately led him back to the right path. Slowly, she allowed forgiveness to take root. Forgiveness did not mean forgetting what happened. It meant choosing to let go of the bitterness that was weighing her down. This choice to forgive opened the door for their relationship to heal. Liam's role in rebuilding the family was perhaps the most significant. Not only had he been the unexpected hero, but he also became the emotional glue that brought everyone together. His courage and intelligence had saved them, but his compassion and maturity kept them united. He continued to support his grandmother emotionally, often spending time with her to ensure she never felt alone with his father. He created new memories, strengthening their bond in ways that went beyond words. Liam became a reminder to both adults that love and family are the greatest sources of strength. The family also began to adopt new habits that reinforced their unity. They started having weekly dinners where they shared their thoughts, discussed their plans, and supported one another. These dinners became a safe space where everyone could express themselves openly. They also worked together on rebuilding their finances, turning what was once a source of stress into a collaborative effort. Even small victories like paying off a debt or saving for the future were celebrated as milestones. These shared experiences brought them closer and helped them regain a sense of normalcy. One of the most profound aspects of this rebuilding process was the shift in values. Before the scam, Daniel's pursuit of love and validation had blinded him to what truly mattered. The ordeal taught him to value relationships over material things, sincerity over appearances, and wisdom over blind trust. His mother also came to appreciate the strength of her family more than ever. She realized that while money could be stolen, the love and loyalty they shared could not be taken away. Liam, still young but wise beyond his years, grew up with a deep understanding of resilience and the importance of standing up for what is right. As the months turned into a year, the family's scars began to fade. They were still there, faint but visible reminders of what they had endured. But instead of being a source of pain, those scars became symbols of their survival. They represented the battles they had fought and the strength they had gained. The family had been tested in the harshest way possible and had emerged victorious, not because the challenges disappeared, but because they faced them together. Their story also inspired others, friends, neighbors, and even strangers who heard about what happened saw them as an example of resilience. The media coverage of the case portrayed Liam as a young hero, but it also highlighted the family's journey of recovery. They received messages of support from people who had faced similar scams, thanking them for showing that healing was possible. This outpouring of support reinforced their sense of purpose and gave them even more motivation to move forward financially. While they never fully regained everything they lost, they achieved something far more valuable: stability and independence. With Daniel's hard work and the restitution ordered by the court, they were able to rebuild their savings gradually. The grandmother invested carefully, this time with more caution and security measures in place. They learned to live simply, but happily, focusing on experiences rather than possessions. Emotionally, the family became stronger than ever. They laughed more, cherished small moments, and never took each other for granted. The ordeal had taught them that life is unpredictable and fragile, and that love must be nurtured every day. They no longer feared the past. Instead, they drew strength from it, knowing they could overcome anything together. The rebuilding also brought new opportunities. Daniel, inspired by Liam's resourcefulness, began educating himself about cybercrime prevention. He even volunteered at community events, warning others about scams and teaching them how to protect themselves. Turning his mistakes into lessons for others became part of his healing process. Liam, motivated by his experience, developed an interest in cybersecurity and law enforcement, dreaming of a future where he could use his skills to protect more families from fraud. In the end, the story of this family is not just about surviving a scam, it is about transformation. They went from victims to victors, from brokenness to wholeness. They rebuilt their relationships, their finances, and their sense of self-worth. Most importantly, they learned that true wealth lies not in money, but in the love and trust they shared. In conclusion, the family rebuilt itself not by erasing the past, but by learning from it. They proved that even in the face of betrayal, forgiveness is possible. Even after losing everything, new beginnings can be created. And even when darkness surrounds you, the light of love and unity can guide you home. Their journey from despair to strength stands as a powerful testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Through acceptance, forgiveness, and unwavering support for one another, they built a new life, one that was not just restored, but renewed. This was not just the end of a painful chapter. It was the start of a beautiful new one where love, trust, and family triumphed over deceit and loss.